Welcome back to a new episode of Mushroom Adventures. Well, if you remember, I had mentioned in one of my past episodes that I had some trouble with some overwatering issues with my king oyster mushrooms. And the issue was that I started noticing this white fuzzy growth that you can see here on the vermiculite and other places. Find another good example over here. This is more of a solid white growth. You can see in some places where it's actually grown and overtaken the pins. And if you remember before, it will grow and overtake the mushrooms. Now, what I've learned is that this is not the spores from the king oysters germinating on the vermiculite and whatnot, but rather it is a parasitic white mold called Sclerotinia. Now there's lots and lots of different species of molds, all different colors, but the most common that mushroom farmers and other people experience in this agricultural world is Aspergillus and green mold, Trichoderma. But white mold is pretty rare, and I've never really even noticed it. But from what I've read, the mold's name is Sclerotinia, and it's pretty common all in the US, and it germinates when conditions are too humid, too wet for too long. And it's responsible for a lot of crop devastations when there's too much rainfall. And sometimes it's called cottony rot or soft stem rot. But it is a parasitic fungus, so it doesn't necessarily need a growing medium to start off. It can actually start off on the mushrooms. So let me show you the problem I have right now. You can see here where the Sclerotinia has grown up the side of this mushroom, and it's all started off the casing layer itself for the most part. And some minor spots I can see where it's started growing on the portion of a cap or around the stem. I don't see a good example of it. Oh, here we go. Back here you can see it growing on the stem of this large one. So that's bad, of course. Now, the only remedy I've seen for this that's a non-environmental change remedy is that you take spores from another fungus. I can't remember the name offhand, but they apparently sell it commercially as a remedy for this that parasites the Sclerotinia fungus. So it, kind of stabs it in the back. But obviously, you don't even need that, because if you get your humidity and water conditions properly done, it'll never even spring up. Now, I've said before, I've seen this cottony white growth in the past. I never knew what it was. I thought it was just the king oyster spores regrowing, or possibly even when I make new bags, the very center of the block here will get some of the leftover sawdust and cottonseed meal mix to fall that's dry off the inside of the bag, and most of it collect in the center. So I thought maybe that was just my psyllium trying to colonize the excess sawdust, which a lot of times causes it not to even fruit from that area. Fortunately, it's been about 7 or 8 days, and I haven't missed it once. And now I kind of believe that you don't really even need to mist these. I've always learned and heard that king oysters like to stay wet, which I'm sure they do, but you can definitely see from these ones that I haven't misted at all, nor have I misted the casing layer at all, are faring far better than these ones up here. You can see this one's badly getting it covered. And these ones got much more misting and the casing layer much more wet off the bat. Also too, I should note that you can see that the date on these bags is 4/7 while these are 5/8. That's quite a gap. That's because I put these into refrigeration because I was getting some overproduction there for a little bit. And I took them out about a month later, and my opinion of that is it's really just not a good idea, because as you can see, some of these bags are producing a little sparsely. Like this one only has one mushroom that came up, one there. A lot of them are seem like they're getting delayed. Usually the solid would come up at the same time, like these are doing. So I don't advise storing the bags in refrigeration for anything longer than maybe a week. Otherwise it'll consume too much of its own energy to survive and not give you as good of a yield at the end. So the solution to this problem is to manage the water and humidity in here. So one of the things I'm doing is on new blocks, I'm not misting at all, and these ones I think I kind of made an error too, where I usually add some additional water to the bags of vermiculite after I've pasteurized it, because it always seems a little bit drier than I want it. But now I think that's actually a bad idea. I'm just going to use the current recipe I have for vermiculite that you can find on my casing episodes, and not add any extra water to it, which will be more of a crumbly kind of flowing mixture that you can more easily spread around too. But these ones I did add a little bit more water, and you can see where there's some of the cottony white Sclerotinia growing in there. But these are much more like what I've experienced in the past and knowing what's happened, where it never went anywhere, probably because the surrounding air was a bit drier. Because these past couple weeks it has been very humid and very rainy here in Ohio. Raining about every other day, cloudy, and so my humidity meter actually down here has been reading high on it, which means it's over 98-99%. Well, maybe not that high, but high enough that I can't set it to any kind of number. And for a while I was keeping it on there at just 80%, which means that my tank of water back here and the fan that blows the mist from my pond foggers turn on when the humidity drops below 80%. But now I got it down to 60%, just because I need to get to a dry point down here to really put an end to this advancement of the Sclerotinia. Another thing too that I've done is usually I would only have this fan running when the foggers are turned on. So now I've put it on a continuous extension cool, or yeah, you see here my surface protector. I got another fan back here too, but now it runs continuous. Two smaller fans on high, gets a bit better circulation. And for a while now I've had this fan back here too, in the corner, making sure that the air in the back gets circulated back towards here, because I've definitely noticed issues in this back corner area where I'll get some black mold on the paint and have to bleach it. But now since I've had good air movement and I haven't got this basement very wet, I haven't seen any issues with that either. Now you can see these newer blocks that I've just put down here a few days. Pins are forming and starting to break through, and there is no sign of the Sclerotinia. See some going there, and I cannot find it on any of these blocks. So I'm hoping it's going to stay that way. Also too, this, you see how nice and crumbly that is? But yeah, I can still squeeze it and water comes out. That should be your major test, is when squeezing it, does it still have some excess water that'll squeeze out? If it does, it's still moist enough to be a casing. Mix and do what it needs to do. Interestingly enough, I learned from my lion's mane videos that when you misted lion's mane, it really messed things up. The same thing is true when my past 2 attempts at doing chicken of the woods. I misted the first time regularly and it went bad pretty quick. Second time I backed off, but still had 1 or 2 mistings on it, and it still got some mold on it. So this time I'm going to treat it just like the lion's mane and not mist it at all. And I think once I get the Sclerotinia under control down here, I can let the humidity rise back up to 80% and still periodically give it a drying out. Now, one thing I really like to do is that one of the issues with my humidistat, is Dayton humidistat up here, is that, you know, it only clicks on and off when the humidity drops below a certain point. Well, that's not very intelligent, because, you know, some days I've wanted to keep the humidity back up to 80%, but drop it to, like, say 60% maybe once every 4 days or so, just to give it a drying out if conditions outside are a bit too humid. So what I thought I might do is design an Arduino unit, which is a microcontroller. There's lots of videos on YouTube. You can learn how to use these things. Very easy to program with a computer and USB. And this is an Arduino Mega, and you can use ones that are a lot smaller than that. This is actually a Wi-Fi internet shield on it, but you don't even need that. You can see it just pops right off there. But the important piece to all this is a humidity reading device, a reading sensor. And so I like to be able to program this to not only record the humidity that's going on, but to turn on and off a relay to my pond fogging units. That way I can have some better control, kind of like customize it, and maybe even tie into some sort of like sensor outside that's tracking the humidity outside, so it can set up some sort of algorithm. But I think that would be kind of interesting to do. Might even be something that I could market as a grow room device tool. Another issue, besides the Sclerotinia, here's a good example. I was going to pick that one off. You can see this mushroom has a little bit of blue-green mold on it. Well, maybe a little more. Actually, I'd say that's probably a little more green, olive green. It could be trichoderma, it could be the olive green mold. I've noticed that when some of these mushrooms get too dry and you've misted them, that you'll get some of these dry parts. This is actually when you see this kind of pattern on a mushroom, there's actually a term for it. In Japan, they call it donko, and they'll sell shiitake varieties like that, specifically with a kind of a broken surface design on the top. But that means that the mushroom got exposed to some overly dry condition at some point,